In the valley of Oakhaven, the year 1342 was a season of frantic, hollow noise. The village was experiencing a sudden boom in trade, and the air was thick with the scent of freshly cut pine and the impatient shouts of merchants. The mayor, a man who measured his worth by the height of his counting house, had decreed that Oakhaven needed a new market hall. He wanted a structure of timber and thatch to show the neighboring provinces that they had arrived. He wanted it finished by the first frost. He wanted immediate results. He wanted to see his success reflected in the morning sun before the year was out. Arthur was the village's master stonemason, but the townspeople had another name for him: the man who looked at clouds. While the other builders were busy throwing up timber frames that could be raised in a month, structures that looked impressive today but would groan under the first heavy snow, Arthur spent his days at the edge of the great northern quarry. He sat on a worn wooden stool, silent and still, staring at a massive, jagged slab of limestone buried deep in the earth. It was gray, stubborn, and appeared utterly useless to the casual observer. Arthur, the mayor, sighed one afternoon, wiping the soot of progress from his brow as he looked at the rising timber of the market hall. The people need a roof over their heads now. Trade is coming. Why are you spending your weeks measuring the grain of a rock that will take 10 men a year just to move? We are building a future, man. Arthur didn't look up from his brass calipers. He was tracing a hairline fracture in the stone that only a master could see, a map of where the earth had shifted 1,000 years ago. Because, Mr. Mayor, Arthur said, his voice like the grinding of pebbles, I am not building a market hall. I am starting the Cathedral of St. Jude. The mayor let out a booming laugh that echoed off the quarry walls. A cathedral? Arthur, look at the math. A structure of that scale, in stone, would take 3 centuries to finish. You'll be dead, your children will be dead, your grandchildren will be old and gray before the first arch is even closed. Why waste your strength on a shadow you will never sit under? Arthur finally looked up. His eyes weren't focused on the mayor. They seemed to be looking through him, at a horizon 300 years away. A market hall lasts a generation, Arthur said. A cathedral anchors a civilization. I am not building for the men of today. I am building for the souls of tomorrow. The burden of the invisible foundation. For the next 5 years, Arthur did nothing that the village recognized as building. While the wooden market hall rose in a flurry of sawdust and cheers, Arthur was in the mud. He was digging, deeper than any well, wider than any cellar. He was lining the earth with massive blocks of granite, fitted so tightly that not even a blade of grass could grow between them. To the villagers, it looked like he was digging a very expensive, very pointless hole. They mocked him as they walked past his deep, reinforced trenches on their way to the market. The wooden hall was finished in 6 months. It was beautiful, but the damp valley air was already starting to warp the doorframes. The thatch leaked during the spring rains, and the wood began to host the slow rot of the valley. Look at Arthur, they jeer. 5 years of sweat and not a single wall to show for it. He's spending his life on a grave for a dream. But Arthur wasn't just digging. He was writing. In the candlelit hours of the night, while the village slept, he covered thick rolls of parchment with what would become known as the 300-year map. He detailed the exact tension required for flying buttresses that wouldn't be attempted for another 80 years. He calculated the weight of a lead roof that would be cast long after his name was forgotten. He drew the patterns for stained glass that required minerals not yet discovered in their region. Most importantly, he walked to the North Hill and planted a grove of 300 oak saplings. He knew that in the year 1460, the master carpenters would need massive, straight-grained beams for the cathedral's vaulted ceiling. Those trees wouldn't be ready for over a century. He was planting a harvest he knew he would never reap. The legacy of the chisel. Arthur died in the winter of 1368. He was found in the quarry, a chisel still gripped in his calloused hand, marking the final block for the primary foundation. At his funeral, the villagers looked at the half-finished stone base, barely 5 feet above the ground, and shook their heads. What a waste of a talented life, they whispered. He died before the first window was even cut. He lived for a ghost. But something strange happened. Arthur's son, Thomas, didn't go back to building wooden houses. He had grown up watching his father study the map. He understood the always. Thomas picked up the chisel. He saw the grove of oaks his father had planted, now strong, young trees. He saw the foundation, so deep and true that it hadn't shifted a fraction of an inch in 30 years of frost and thaw. Because the foundation was perfect, Thomas didn't have to waste time fixing his father's mistakes. He didn't have to compensate for poor materials or rushed decisions. He could build higher. He could innovate. Then came Thomas's daughter, then her son. Each generation followed the map. When the Great Fire of 1492 swept through the valley, the wooden market hall, the pride of the 1340s, vanished in 20 minutes of ash. The village was leveled, but the stone skeleton of the cathedral stood defiant. It didn't burn, it didn't flinch, it sheltered the entire population within its unfinished but unbreakable walls. In the year 1642, exactly 3 centuries after Arthur first sat at the quarry, the final spire was capped with a golden cross. The Cathedral of St. Jude was the wonder of the world. It provided the village with an identity, an economy of pilgrims, and a sanctuary that outlasted every war, every famine, and every king. Arthur never saw a single stained glass window. He never heard the choir's echoes. But every beam of light that filtered through that glass, warming the stone below, was a gift he had sent forward through time. Blank, underscore, blank. The anatomy of the long view. We live in a market hall culture. We are addicted to the quarterly report, the viral post, the overnight success, and the immediate hit of dopamine. We are obsessed with the current state, and as a result, we have forgotten how to build for the legacy state. Short-term thinking is a survival mechanism for the desperate, but long-term thinking is a superpower for the visionary. When you think in decades, you stop competing with everyone who is thinking in minutes. You become unshakable because your foundation is deeper than their distractions. To adopt the Stonecutter's mindset, you must master the 3 horizons. 1. The foundation, the invisible years. The most important work you do will often look like digging a hole. It is the skill building, the character forging, and the boring systems that no one sees. Do not let the lack of applause stop the digging. 2. The planting, the future harvest. What are the oaks in your life? These are the investments in health, in compound interest, in deep relationships, in your children. That offers 0 return today but will be the roof over your head in 20 years. 3. The map, the ego death. True long-term thinking requires the death of the ego. You must be willing to work on things that will reach their peak after you have left the room. You are a link in a chain, not the end of it. Blank, underscore, blank. Your call to action. The greatest tragedies of our modern era are built of wood and thatch, quick fixes, shallow relationships, and hacks that crumble when the fire of reality comes. The greatest lives, the ones that anchor civilizations, are built of stone. Your challenge: identify 1 market hall in your life right now. Is it a get-rich-quick side project? A relationship you're only half invested in? A skill you're faking rather than mastering? Now, replace it with a foundation stone. Stop looking for the viral shortcut and commit to the craft that takes 10,000 hours. Stop the quick win spending and start the boring, automated investment that compounds over 30 years. Plant an oak today. Reach out to a young person in your field and begin a mentorship that won't bear fruit for 5 years. Most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they vastly underestimate what they can do in 10. Would you like me to help you define your cathedral goal and work backward to find the first block you need to cut today?